our webinar session of Higher Education Virtual Expo 2021. So with me today is Ms. Claire from ISB, who will be presenting a topic on a crash course in CV writing and interview techniques. For any inquiries, you can type your question in the chat provided, and we will be answered during the last 10 minutes of this session. So, Ms. Claire, you can start the session now.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So, as was said, I will be talking about a crash course in CV writing and interview techniques. I'll just share my screen here. Okay. There we go. Okay, so today I was talking about writing CVs from a student or graduate point of view, and this can be a little daunting for students and graduates because most students and graduates may not have work experience. And so when a university asks for a CV, it can be a little difficult to know what to put in there. So first of all, what are they actually looking for? From someone who hasn't actually completed any work experience, what might they be looking for? Well, the CV is just a professional profile of you. You can provide a summary of your abilities, including details on the skills and knowledge that you have to offer employers, including your educational achievements, any grades that you've got, your courses, any projects that you've completed. And this is something that universities will want to know for undergraduates to start degrees and for graduates entering the workplace. You can also expand on industry-specific knowledge and the transferable workplace skills that you've gained throughout your school experiences. So although you may not have any, actual concrete work experience, that doesn't mean to say that you haven't been able to acquire the transferable skills that you would need from moving from a school setting to moving to a university setting, or from moving from a university setting to a workplace setting. So this is a chance where you can talk about the extracurricular activities that you've been doing, whether that's within your school or whether it's out in the community. Basically a chance for you to show off the skills that you've gained, the communication, teamwork, organization, planning, IT. These are things that are needed in both universities and in the workplace. So this is something that you can use for both of those. It is important to note, though, that the CV is, although I'm talking about using your extracurricular activities to talk about the experiences and skills that you've gained, it is not a personal statement, and therefore you can only really touch upon the experiences that you've had. It's not a story talking about, how you've grown from your experiences, how you're going to apply these to your future career or course. It is just a simple outline as to what experience you have and what skills you gain from it. They will expect to see your education and qualifications. So this is a fairly straightforward section of the CV. You put in where, the schools that you've attended, the universities that you've attended or colleges, when you attended them, and the qualifications that you gained from them. You can talk about placements and projects, and then this will be the biggest part of your CV from a graduate or a student's point of view, because as I said before, you might not have a lot of work experience, but that doesn't mean that you haven't had some good life experience that you can put in there. So to compensate for your lack of work experience, fill this section with plenty of examples of skills that you've applied outside. And as I said, we're not giving a whole background or story or anything like that. It's just an outline to begin with. So just a one-line headline about what the role itself actually was. And then that would be followed by the key responsibilities. So what did you actually do within this project or within this placement? What were your responsibilities? What were you in charge of? And within that, rather than just saying, well, I did this, this, and this, use professional language. So use the language that employers and that universities would expect to see. Talk about the transferable skills that you gained throughout that. Which transferable skills did you demonstrate? What did you gain that maybe you didn't have a lot of experience with before. And then talk about your key achievements. So were there any significant impacts that you made on either your school, the community, or if you have managed to do an internship or a work placement or a hospital rotation, did you have a significant impact on any of the people that were around you during those experiences? And if you have, then you can put that in there too. Any awards and recognition that you've received for any appeals that you've done outside of school, or for example, for the Duke of Edinburgh, for CMAC, Maths Olympiads, anything that you've completed in terms of outside of the classroom that you've gained recognition for, it's definitely worth putting into your CV as well. So for example, if during O-levels or IGCSEs, you were ranked, highly in the world and you've had an award from the examination board or from your local government, then you can include those awards in there as well. Now, this shouldn't really be awards that have been gained within your school. For example, an end of term award wouldn't really be appropriate for a CV. It is something you could talk about in a personal statement if you've continuously won awards in a particular relevant subject to the course that you're applying for. But what they're really looking for in a CV is recognition outside of your school for the achievements that you've had. Also, listing your interests. Now, again, this is not a personal statement or a chance for you to talk at length about the things that you're interested in, about your hobbies, about what you're like as a person. It's really just what interests do you have that will have a positive impact on where you want to be. So if, for example, you really enjoy playing sports, you can't really just write down, I like to play football in my spare time. What does that show? Okay, you have to think deeper about what skills are you gaining there that future employees or future admission tutors would want to know about you. So the playing sports shows communication skills, it shows leadership skills depending on the role that you play. Working within your community, organising fundraising, taking part in fundraising, volunteering, basically things that you enjoy doing in your free time, whether it's an ECA that you particularly like doing and have showed extra interest in and as a hobby outside of school, then you can include that, as long as it's something that you can show is going to help you in some way in the future, and that your future employees or your future admission tutors are going to gain from having you as a student or as an employee in their institution. So this is a very basic outline of how all of those different sections that I've just looked at, this is how they would be put together. So you can see at the very top of the professional profile, so the overall background of who you are, where you've come from, what you want to do, your education and qualifications. Again, this does not have to be solely things that you have gained inside school. This could be if you have music exams, if you have achieved a certain level in playing music and you've taken the examinations, then they should go in there too, because at achieving certain grades in music can show certain attributes as well for you as a person. The placements and projects would come next, and as I said, this will be the biggest part. So an outline of each of your activities. Now, this doesn't mean to say that you're going to have 5 pages because you're an excellent student and you do lots of ECAs and you help out a lot in the community. You still really want your CV to be 1 to 2 pages at most. And so you need to pick out, you need to be precise and prioritize the ones that show off the most transferable skills for you as a student. So an outline of the name of the activity, your responsibilities, the outline of what you actually did throughout that placement or project, your main outcome from that, and then the dates and perhaps a reference of someone who could speak on your behalf for what it is that you've completed. And then any awards and recognition. Again, if you don't have anything to put in that section, then you just take it out. Okay, we're not making up anything to put in there. If you don't have it, it's okay. You're still young. You don't have a lot of work experience. They're not expecting every section of a general CV to be filled, but you can just take that out. And then, as I said, the interests at the bottom would just be interests that are relevant to what it is that you want to do, whatever it is that you're applying for, whether that's a university course or to enter the field of work. So that is the basics. That is a crash course to writing a CV. These are the key elements that I think need to be included. Again, this would only, for universities that are asking for CVs, and quite a lot of them do, they want to say, can you write in a professional way? They've seen your personal statement, or your letter of motivation, depending on where you've applied to. They would already have looked at that and got a feel of who you are as a person. This is, can you write in a professional way? It's not an essay, it's not a story, it's being very precise and blunt and clear with what it is that you have achieved so far. Next up, I'll talk a little about interviews. So I'll cover the common types of interviews that students tend to be invited to complete, what to research before the interview, and I mean, as far in advance as possible, not the morning of, what to do on the day of the interview, and then what you should be looking at afterwards. So some of the most common types of interview that students are being asked to complete for courses now are multiple mini interviews, particularly those who are applying for medicine and dentistry. This is a great way for universities to get to know students much better, and not only to see how they cope with an interview one-on-one, but how they cope with interacting with other people. How do they cope with working as a team? They can tell so much from a personal statement or from a CV, but sometimes you really just need to see them in person. How are they coping with other people? Are there some difficult people in a group? How do they react to that? Can they lead? Do they follow other people's orders well? So the multiple mini interview, this varies university to university, depending on the course that you're applying for, depending on the university that you're applying to. They also tend to change the topics of the mini interviews each year slightly, or they'll change the questions so that people can't over prepare for these. They want to see the real you in these situations, not everything that you've prepared to get to this point, not how much you've read online about other people who've gone through interview processes and what are the questions that they were asked and what answers did they give. It's more what are your gut reactions to different topics. So some of the more common stations that they have in the multiple mini interview are role play, in which they'll either a member of the staff will work with you, or if possible, and it's in a group setting, they will pair you up with another candidate and you'll role play a scenario from there. So if, for example, you are applying for dentistry or medicine, it may be you interacting with a patient and seeing how you deal with that situation. You can also have a station focusing on your personal statement. So they may be asking you about things that you've brought up in your personal statement, things that stand out to them and they want to know a little more about. So it's very important not to lie in the personal statement. Make sure everything you put in your personal statement is truthful and that you can talk about it a little further if asked. Depending on the course that you've applied to as well, they may have an ethics station where they will ask you about, what would you do in this scenario, or what do you think about this? And it's, can be quite controversial issues that they discuss. And so it's important to do a lot of background reading on the ethics of the course that you're applying for as well. They may look at data analysis. They may look at, for dentistry, they may look at manual dexterity. So obviously within dentistry, there's a lot of delicate work that has to be done. And so they may, if in person, they may give you you know, some origami to do, something that you have to do with your hands, it's delicate, to show them that you have that manual dexterity. You could also have a traditional panel interview where it's a row of panelists who are asking you questions. One may take the lead whilst others add in some questions near the end, or a complete panel where they have a group of people and they ask you the same amount of questions as each other, and so it's just you and say a group of 4 people interviewing you. Group interviews seem to be quite common these days as well, where students are paired up with other applicants, but not necessarily within the same field. But you're given, again, it's more a question of we know your grades, we know from your letter of motivation or your personal statement what kind of person you are and why you want to do the course that you want to do. And so the group interviews, in terms of mixing students, it means that they can ask questions and have you respond to scenarios that involve you as a person, you as a student, rather than just you within that field. Everything else you would have done up until then would have been talking about why you want to do a particular course, but how do you interact with people in general? What are your thoughts on more global issues? And that's what usually comes up in the group interviews if you're doing them with other students. We also have video interviews, and especially during COVID, this has been quite a popular one now. So this, you could have one that's like a panel interview where it may be 1 or 2 people interviewing you just over Zoom, or we've seen more and more now, especially with the Canadian universities, where they will have a pre-recorded question, and then you will basically have a screen where you just see yourself and you answer the question. And it's quite strange looking at a blank screen to answer interview questions. But that is something that takes practice as well, and it is good. There are a lot of websites out there that you can use to practice those type of questions. Now, again, as it's not a back and forward interview, it's not a back and forth conversation, the questions can be very varied. So the ones that we've had so far this year, we've had questions such as, what's your favorite type of ice cream? That was one of the video interview questions that we had this year, which was not prepared for. And that is the point of a lot of these interviews. A lot of the questions can be not to trick you, but to see what you come up with when you are not over preparing, when you are not memorizing answers, when you are not doing lots of research online and then coming out with an answer, but what is your gut instinct? What are your true thoughts? And so a lot of these video interviews, the questions may seem, nothing to do with the field that you're applying for. It's more to do with you as a person. Informal phone interviews as well, and we've had a few of those this year where the alumni from either current students or alumni from a university will have an informal phone call just to find out a bit more about you as a person, what you hope to achieve at the university that you're applying for. What do you know so far, and do you have any questions that you'd like to ask a student? Because obviously what you see on the website, what the university reps are telling you, what the website tells you, can be very different to what a student actually feels in it. So it can be really beneficial to hear from a student as well. These interviews tend to be very informal, and although you should still take them seriously and try your best to give a good impression, it should be less stressful, but you should still be very clear on what it is that you want to do, what your goal is, what your aim is, and why you are interested in that university. So before you have an interview, so you've got an email from a university saying, we'd like to interview you on this day. Here's what we need to do. Be sure that you know what form the interview will take. So it may not be one of the ones that we just looked at. It could be a different type of interview, but you need to know the style of the interview that you're going to have. And is it a formal interview? Is it not? Make sure you read the university website. Show that you've done your homework, that you know the course well, that you know the university well. This shows that you've done your homework. You know exactly what you're getting into and what to expect. A common question that they asked, that the universities can ask as well, is to elaborate on why specifically that university. So you could go in and say, well, this university has got excellent facilities, and so I'd like to go there. You do need to be a little bit more specific with that, because a lot of universities share the same kind of facilities. And so they can say, okay, we do have good facilities, but this university a mile away also has fantastic facilities. So why us? Why not them? So try and be as specific as you can. Find out something unique about the university that you're applying to. And it's the same with the course as well. Many students who are pursuing medicine will say, I want to be a doctor because I want to help people. And well, nurses help people, and teachers help people, and social workers help people. That's not really a reason why you would want to be a doctor. There has to be so much more to it than that. So try to be specific about why that course, why that university. Even better if you can relate it to what you are studying now. So was there something that sparked an interest in the subject that you're studying that made you want to pursue a university course or a career in that field? Look over your application form before you go into the interview. As I said before, they may ask you questions about something that you've wrote on your CV or in your personal statement or your letter of motivation. Look through your application again, just to be clear on what you've actually put in there and the areas that they may ask you about. So for example, they may ask you about an ECA that you've put down, or work in the community that you've put down there, or an award that you've won. Just make sure that you are able to talk about anything that you have put down in your application. Again, looking at your current subject notes can help you to feel a bit more confident going into an interview if you're clear of the subject knowledge of the course that you want to. Read a quality newspaper or magazine related to your subject. So quite often the interviewers will want to know that you're not only interested in a subject or a course within the subject that you take in class, that it's not only during your class time and your school time that you are doing research, that you're finding out more about a specific field. They want to know that outside of that, you're doing extra reading. So what are you reading these days? And what are the main issues within the field that you want to apply for, or what are some exciting developments within the field that you want to apply for? Also think of any points you may want to make in the interview. If there are specific things that you want to get across to the interviewer, have them wrote down in front of you so that you know to bring that up. It could be that there's a significant part of your application that you want to tell them about. Make sure you write it down so that you know to get that across. Prepare answers for common questions. Like I said at the start, why that course, why that university? And it may seem very simple, but students can tend to feel very intimidated and nervous after the first few questions if those first few questions don't go well. So try to have, although it sounds like, well, obviously I'm applying for this, so I want to do it, but why? Be very clear on what it is that is motivating you to take that course. They will always ask you at the end of an interview if you have any questions that you want to ask them. Be careful here. You should ask a question, but try not to ask a question that is easily answered on for example, the first page of their website. Show that you have done your homework and that if you've got a genuine question, make sure you ask that, but make sure that it's not something that you can find within a minute on their website. So this could be a question about how the course is assessed. It could be about the teaching methods. It could be about specific modules. If it's a course that has a placement year, you could ask some more about that. If it's a medicine course, are there local hospitals that the school has an attachment with, where it's a teaching hospital? You could ask about that. You could ask about the local community surrounding the area that you want to go to. Just questions that may make a difference to you when you're there, but that is not easily found on the website. Do take some notes as soon as you've finished your interview. Try to take some notes on the questions that have been asked, and where you think, oh, well, that question didn't go so well. I maybe need to think about that a little bit more. Because if you have other interviews, especially if it's within the same field of study that you're applying for, you may get the same questions, or even if it's not the same questions, they might be similar. Now, no two interviews will be exactly the same, and so some will vary greatly, but it will fill you with a little bit more confidence if you go into an interview thinking, okay, I may not know exactly what they're going to ask, but I have a good base for if they ask this kind of question, I'm ready to go for that. The next one is plan your journey. Now, this again sounds simple, but if it's one that's in person, make sure you take into account, if you have to go abroad for an interview, making sure you take into account the journey time to actually get there. Nowadays, though, of course, it's going to be a virtual interview. That doesn't mean that there's any less preparation needed. This means that you have to do a practice Zoom session beforehand. Make sure that you know how to angle your screen, how to make sure your volume control is good. Make sure you're doing it somewhere that has a good internet connection. The lighting is good. All these little things that you might not necessarily worry about day to day. But for that 20-30 minute interview, we want everything to go perfect and as smoothly as possible to minimize your stress. So just make sure you have that before. Make sure you get a good night's sleep before. Don't stay up all night worrying about it, and that's easier said than done. But the more rested you feel, the more confidence you'll have. Arrive early, and again, this is the same even if it's a Zoom call. Make sure you are settled down and ready and sitting where and logged into where you need to be in plenty of time. If there is a problem, make sure you contact your interviewer as early as possible. Sometimes these are beyond your control, and admission tutors can understand that sometimes these things happen, but there's a difference between there being a problem or an issue and you not being able to resolve it in time than you being tardy or being not having great time management and getting to things on time. Dress smartly but comfortably. So they're not going to expect you in full suit, but a smart shirt or a smart blouse is important to show the interviewer that you are serious about the course, about the interview, and about your application and your want to join that university. Make sure you turn off your mobile. Again, this sounds like something very simple, but it is something that you need to be aware of. You do not want any distractions during the interview, and it's not going to paint you in a very good light if your ringtone is sounding off during an interview, especially if it's a really embarrassing one. So during the interview, be aware of your body language. So look at the interviewer as much as possible, make eye contact and smile from time to time. They are going to be aware that you are going to be nervous. They are not going to expect you to have all the confidence in the world. You are students or graduates, they know you won't have a lot of experience in this, but that doesn't mean that you can't still show that you're really excited that you've got this interview, that you appreciate the fact that there are thousands of other people that have applied that will not have had this opportunity, but you have got it, and you should be really happy about that. It means you've been shortlisted, and you want to convey that excitement to the interviewer as well. So yes, we're stressed and we're nervous, but we're also really excited about this opportunity. Be enthusiastic about your course. Make sure, it's one to say, yes, we're very serious. I really want this. This is what I want to do. But it's also important to make sure your interest in the course shines, that your fascination with a certain subject comes across to the interviewer. So they're looking for people who think independently and consider new ideas. They're looking for people that they can teach. They don't want someone who already thinks that they know all the answers, or that they have enough background knowledge that actually they're already halfway through the course before they've even got there. They're looking for, the tutors are looking for people that they can teach. They want to teach you. And so you need to show that you are capable of learning and adapting and, wanting to evolve in that way. They're looking for students who will thrive well in the course. And so show them what you can do. Again, if you think back to the CV and all of the ECUs, talking about your interests outside of school, outside of the classroom, can help to show that. So During the interview, take time with your questions. If you don't understand a question or you don't know the answer to a question, then be honest. They don't expect you to know everything at this point. You are a student who is just applying, so they will not expect you to know everything. They will appreciate your honesty in saying, I'm not sure about that, that's something that I need to look up or do a little research on. Better to do that than to lie and have them question you further on it, follow-up questions, and you struggle and don't have an answer, and then you get tongue-tied and nervous. And so it's better just to be honest if you don't understand anything. But take a second after they ask you a question, take a second to think about, what did they actually ask you? Don't answer questions that you've just prepared for. Answer what they're actually asking you. Make sure you're answering the questions. Expect the unexpected. So they're not trying to trick you, but as I said earlier, like with the role plays, the multiple mini interviews, they will quite often just want to see how you react under unfamiliar circumstances. Try to relax and be nervous. That's the same as before. They just want to know you as a person and what you're like. So after the interview, don't worry if you found it hard. They are designed to, stretch you and to find out more about you. Think about what you've learned. How can you take away what you've gained, that experience of the interview? So we've been talking about the skills you've been gaining from your ECS. What skills, what have you developed and learned from the interview? And again, write down your answers so that for the next one, you can think about what went well, what didn't go well, what do you need a little bit more work on. When the next interview comes up, you're even more prepared and more confident about that. Okay, so I think I've just run over time, so good luck with any interviews you have with the CV writing, and I think we've got time for questions now.
Yes, thank you, Miss Claire. So we got question from Cash Ras. So what can I do to add those if I lack the confidence to approach the referee for their feedback or referrals? What other alternative can be used to make up for those?
Right, what was that? If there's referrals if there's a referee that you're not comfortable with approaching, was that the question?
So what is the other alternative that can be used to make up those?
To make up the referees or to make up the experiences?
To make up the, I think for the reference section, instead of doing the reference section.
In the reference section, it depends on the type of activity that you've completed. If it's something within school, generally anyone in the school who knows you, who is in a position of authority, they can help you with that. Generally, whoever's in charge of your sixth form or your coordinator. So those are the people in school that can help you. If it is something outside of school, then it could be that if it's a company that you've been working for, you may have to go and speak to someone else within the company who may not know you as well. But please do bear in mind that not all referees will actually be asked to provide a reference for you. It is important that anyone that you put down you've spoken to beforehand, and they are willing and able to write that down for you. So if you don't feel comfortable asking someone for a reference, then do not put their name down. You do have to find an alternative. And I would recommend, if you're a student still in school or you're a student at university already, that you use someone from your school to provide that reference for you.
Okay, so another question from Shaida Ibrahim. What is the average number of pages for CV? And the second question, how do we make a CV look eye-catching?
Okay, so the CV, generally admission tutors, for example, will receive hundreds of CVs, or if not thousands. So you want to keep it as short and succinct as possible. Again, it's not the personal statement, so we're not looking for paragraphs. It should just be 1 to 2 pages long, because it is an outline of your qualifications, of your achievements, and of any further awards that you've been given. So like the template that I showed earlier, that was all on one A4 page. So really, that would be the ideal. If not, double-sided, but I wouldn't recommend any more than that. And sorry, what was the second question?
The second question, how to make the CV look eye-catching?
There's to be honest, there's not much you can do to make a CV particularly eye-catching. In terms of layout, there are standard layouts which you can find on the internet fairly easily. Student template CV, student resume CV template, anything like that will show you a very basic templates come up. And like I said, because you are outlining things, there's nothing that can make it. It's the activities themselves that make it eye-catching. It's what you're actually, it's the content of it that will make it eye-catching. So it is what are the outstanding experiences that you've had so far. So for example, if you've taken part in the Duke of Edinburgh or BGIC, things like that, putting that down, the amount of skills and experiences you gain from those are amazing, and they're so transferable. And so it's really the activities that you're doing. So I would suggest that if you're in a lower down year where you're not applying to university right now, I would suggest that if you're, for example, a year 12 or just entered sixth form, that you make sure you are doing worthwhile activities that you can gain a lot of these skills and experiences from.
Okay. So another question from Patrick Lai, what is the difference between CV and resume? And in which situation should we use them?
I would suggest only using a CV or resume if a university asks you to. Generally, not many universities ask for them, but there are a select few that, especially in the last few years, they have asked for these to be put in. And so I would say that, CV and resume, they're generally asking for exactly the same thing. So whatever they ask you for, whichever the university or the place of employment ask you for, change the name at the top to include that. So we've really only had universities asking for CVs, and so that's what we've been working with.
Okay. And then should a CV include photo of the applicant?
Not unless an employer or the university admission team has specifically asked you for a picture. We would not recommend that if you're creating, if they give you a template and there's a space for a photo, then absolutely. If not, then do not include that in there. If the university specifically want to see that, or if an employer wants to see that, then they will ask for it. There's no need to put it in if it's not specifically asked for.
Okay. And then the other question from Arif Muhammad, how to answer questions, something that you don't know the answer during the interview?
If it's a question that you feel like you probably should know, if it's a question about the course and you feel like it's a basic question that you should know, that you cannot just say, I don't know, just give yourself a second to think about it. Think about what the research that you've done so far. Is there something that you've read? And it can be quite daunting where, someone asks you a question and the first thing you think is, I didn't research that, or I don't know. It's just, I didn't prepare that. But think about all the preparation you've done around that. Think about all the preparation that all the research and reading that you've done up until now. There's generally going to be something there that will help you. If it's course specific, if it's subject specific, you're going to have done your research beforehand, and so there will be a way. But if it is an instance where they ask you about a particular university point or a particular teaching method or assessment style, and you're not familiar with it, be honest. Just say, that's not something that I've had a chance to look into, or that's not something that I've experienced in my school or in my university so far. That is something that if this university is, if that is the way that it's implemented, then that is something for me to look into before the start date. So show a willingness to learn, but you will never be expected to know the answers to everything yet. Like I said earlier, they want to teach you. They want to They want you to be able to learn from them. And so don't feel the pressure to know absolutely everything. Make sure you know the absolute basics, the ones that you should know, but be honest if there's something that you're not sure about.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Claire. I'm afraid that's all the question that we are able to answer for now. Maybe you can give alternative on how the other attendees can reach you if they have a question.
Well, as far as I know, this is being recorded and is going to be put online. So
Yeah.
if I put my presentation on there as well, I can put my email address onto that, and maybe questions can be sent to that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. Thank
There
you,
is,
Miss.
sorry, there is also lots of resources online as well. Especially if you're thinking of UCAS, there's so many helpful links on UCAS, which will help you with interviews and CVs, personal statements, things like that. So the documents and the help is out there. Just do some research on it.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Miss Claire, and thank you everyone for attending the webinar session to 2021 with us. And we hope that it benefits all of you. Okay, so the next session will be presented by Finlay, 11 a.m. this morning. Okay, well, thank you everyone. Thank you, Miss Claire.
Thank you.
Sudah semua.